A young teenager want to go to school, but forced to work in an illegal mine with his father, only to make barely enough money to fulfill hunger, while their masters became wealthy on their behalf. Though it sounds like a story of past, but it's the sad reality of the modern era till today. So let's unravel how big corporations exploit from poor countries through modern slavery. At start, these corporations enter African, Sub-Saharan and even some South Asian countries as savior for their broken economy and starving people. They give big dreams of employment and better quality of life in exchange of land to build their factories and access of the country's natural resources and mines. Even though it seems really good at start, but slowly they show their true colors and their exploitation starts becoming more prominent. Though the MNCs promise a surge of employment, in reality the nature of these jobs are really exploitative. They often give much less than the minimum wages and employ underage workers to maximize their profits. An estimated 250 million underaged work over 16 hours in MNC supply chains, often in hazardous conditions like garment factories and toy workshops. An Apple supplier, Foxconn, was found to have laborers under 16 who were working for 12-hour shifts in its Chinese factories. A study by the Institute of Policy Studies found that between 1995 and 2017, top 50 US corporations increased their profits by 171%, while wages for production workers in developing countries only rose by 3% after adjusting for inflation. An Oxfam study found many Coca-Cola workers in El Salvador received less than minimum wage and faced physical risks like burns and exhaustion. But when workers raised their voice, then in reaction MNCs suppressed the labor unions, and workers had to face forced overtime without pay. And even worse, these workers can return to their previous jobs because before arrival of big corporations, these poor countries were struggling, but they still had rich natural resources which were their support in hard times and their only hope for a bright future. But the big corporations tricked their government to hand them over the precious resources only to get highly exploitative jobs in return. And when they export these rich materials like diamonds, irons, other ores, gas, oil, to make huge profit, the government and the people of that country get nothing. And often these industries also destroys the environment and nearby agricultural lands. Occidental petroleum contaminated land and water in Colombia. Shale oil devastated the lands of Ogoni people in Nigeria through oil spills and gas flaring. Chevron dumped over 16 billion gallons of toxic waste in Ecuadorian Amazon, causing health problems. But how these companies get away with all this? The reasons are even worse than you think. These poor countries often have an unstable and corrupt government and many local conflicts, which is used by the foreign power. Big corporations tend to buy the local thugs and corrupt government officials to safeguard their illegal and exploitative mining. A great example of this is connection between militant group of Niger Delta and the CCP. The Niger Delta of Nigeria is rich in oil and other various metals, but sadly occupied by militant group Boko Haram. Though there is no solid evidence, many believe that China is connected with them and supports them with guns and ammunition in return of oil and minerals. But these MNCs not just harm these poor countries, they also exploit their own countries in many ways. As many developed nations charges a relatively higher taxes on their big corporations, they use the tax loops of developing countries so smartly that they avoid paying taxes to both the countries and does a significant damage to both their economies. Glencore, the world's largest commodity trader, avoided $30 billion in taxes from 2007 to 2018 through a web of subsidiaries in tax havens. A company paid an effective tax rate of only 0.5% on its profits. MNCs avoid an estimated 500 billion in taxes each year by shifting profits to low or no tax locations. This robs developing countries of revenue needed for public services. The harm does not end in taxes, it also affects the daily consumer items. A prominent example is the glitter in cosmetic products, which comes from mica and other harmful microplastics. And this mica, which is highly hazardous, comes from illegal and unsafe mines, causing serious harm to the miners. And even worse, the long-term use of these products causes permanent damage on users' skin. Now that you know all this, you might think, what can you do about it? Though we can't do much on an individual level, but we can raise awareness on this topic by sharing this to others and force ourselves to fact-check before consuming anything, which may stop this exploitation in long term.